Great. Well, welcome everyone to another Step community call. This one's going to be quite interesting. We're going to be talking a bunch of different topics, both Step and general market and SolanaFloor and NFTs and all this sort of stuff. And with me is the illustrious, esteemed Kristin. And Kristin, maybe do you want to start by introducing yourself? What do you do? And we'll go from there.
Yeah, thanks very much, George. Hi, everybody. GM. I am Kristin. I am the designer at Step. So a lot of my work on the team involves helping us form everything on Solana into the dashboard product that you see that we have with Step at the moment. Yeah.
Very good. And Kristin and I, we've known each other for many years. We've been through many crypto battles. It's all good. Maybe we can touch on some of those during the call as well.
Seen some shit.
Yeah, seen some shit. Okay, cool. Well, look, it's September. That's what word on the street was telling me. So I think we can maybe talk about some of the different things which we've got going on to kick that one off. We do have a new update going live pretty soon, and I'm just taking a look here at some of the things going out perhaps in the next update. Kristin, maybe we can sort of touch on setting things on fire and burning them, particularly NFTs and tokens.
Very revolutionary. Yeah, that's right. So one of the features that we have coming out recently in the next release, I think it would be actually, is token and NFT burning. This is something we've been working on for a little while. Wanted to get it exactly right, but yeah, a consistent piece of feedback we had from a lot of users is that it's not uncommon for people to get spam NFTs or just junk tokens that you've been airdropped and you don't really want in your wallet, and you don't want to have to go and set up a new address and everything. So having some functionality there that makes it a lot easier for you to burn those and just get rid of them out of your wallet is really useful. And in testing it, it feels very cathartic as well. Like, it's nice to be able to just cleanse your wallet of these things that you have to look at fairly frequently. But yeah, a nice touch for it as well is that it will also reclaim any of the rent that was used for any of the token accounts or NFT accounts that were being burnt.
Yes, I want to talk about that rent thing in a moment. But I guess as a designer, from your perspective, like, were there any hesitations in adding this? Like, what if people press the wrong button and wreck themselves? Are they going to check themselves before they wreck themselves, or what's the deal?
Yeah, so that's definitely one of the things that we have to think about with not just this feature, there's a few other features actually, but the capacity for users to hurt themselves is a pretty persistent theme of designing anything in crypto, and this is no exception to that. So the thinking we have is that, we really want to just enable people, give them all the tools that they need to be able to manage their own wallet and money in the way that they see fit, and just support that with some notifications and guidance about, hey, maybe exert a little bit of caution about something you're about to do. So what we have with this feature is just a gentle notification there reminding them that, like, hey, if this has value, or if you're not sure about this at all, then maybe think twice about doing it, because once something is burnt, it is unsurprisingly gone forever. So yeah, don't want to stop people doing it, but also want to just hopefully not help them hurt themselves too much either.
Yeah, definitely. And I saw that Phantom currently does have the burning functionality for NFTs, but this will be one step further in that we'll be doing burning for not only NFTs, but also tokens as well. And just to talk a little bit more about the Solana Rent thing. So anything that you do on Solana when you open a new token account for something, and a token account is really just sort of, a place to receive that specific type of token. So in your Solana wallet, if you receive Step tokens, you have a Step token account. If you receive Samo tokens, you have a Samo token account. And in order to open that token account, you have to pay some money to the blockchain, essentially, for that. So when somebody sends you a token that you don't previously have, they actually have to pay that money to the blockchain. So one of the cool things is that all of these, like, I see it more on Solana because it's so cheap and stuff to send transactions. I still do see it on Ethereum addresses, but you collect like a bunch of spam, like tokens, NFTs, just total nonsense things in your wallet. So the cool thing is that you can burn them pretty soon with Step, and then you literally make money on it. So you want people to spam you. You should go out there and you should say, everyone go spam me, here's my wallet, because you can go and claim back the rent for those tokens that they're sending you, and you literally make money. So maybe that's a sort of side avenue to some of the tools that we've got going on Step as well. I don't know. Yeah, do you want to sort of touch on some of the tools that we've got going, or talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the highlights as well over the last year and a half plus now that we've all been building this is just seeing a lot of users not know this fact and then use a feature like that, get the rent back. And for a lot of people who have been like power users but didn't necessarily understand that fact of Solana, like they're recovering reasonable amounts of money each time, and it's a little bit like lotto almost. So that's been pretty cool.
Yeah, totally. And we on Step, we put, like, on the left side menu, we put a thing there called account tools, and you can click that button and it will show you how much money you have pending that you can claim back. So that was one of those features that we implemented, and we were like, oh yeah, that sounds cool. And then all of a sudden everyone's like, oh, this is the coolest thing in the world, because I literally had a bunch of free money here that I'd forgotten about. So it was another one of those examples of just implementing an interesting feature, but it turned out to be much bigger than it was. Maybe there's something in it there, Kristin, about sort of designing for something that you want to see rather than, what's the flavor of the month. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that? Like, essentially, we want to build stuff that we ourselves find useful, and maybe that's sort of a good insight rather than just sort of, potatoes are the flavor of the month, let's go and build a potato, like something like that, right?
Yeah, I mean that's a super persistent theme throughout Step's entire history, especially like we launched in DeFi Summer, Solana Summer, and DeFi Summer as well, to be honest. So the amount of activity kicking off on Solana at that time was just immense, and the number of projects that would pop up. Everybody, of course, wants to see all these different projects supported in the dashboard. There's practical work behind all of that, and however hard you think it is, I can guarantee you it's probably about 10x harder than what you're thinking it is to actually support nearly every project on Solana. And that's just from a technical standpoint. Once you move past, technical execution of a team and whether or not they're any good at that, maybe some of these teams aren't particularly trustworthy or something like that as well. That's something that we, sometimes we would have opinions about that in the background, but users wouldn't necessarily know about it. So it's like, well, do we really support this thing? We've got our own opinion about it. Are we right? Are we wrong? There's real work involved in us supporting something that then turns out to be a rug. Very often in the early days as well, people would assume that because they could see something in the dashboard that it was somehow endorsed by Step as well, which certainly is not the case in any way, shape or form. We just try hard to present what is happening on the chain. But there's a real balance to be struck in terms of like what is happening everywhere and how feasibly can we support it all. So we do like to kind of just be a little bit, cautious and measured with what we integrate, how we integrate it, when we integrate it, because it's very common for some things to just disappear. And, it's pretty heartbreaking when you've spent a couple of weeks designing and then the team's gone and integrated something and then it just stops existing for whatever reason. That's a real waste of time. So we want to avoid those scenarios wherever we can.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I guess sort of talking about integrations and the early days, I'm just looking here at some of my notes. So, talking about next deploy, right? We've also got some translates coming out for the Step app. So I guess maybe there's a conversation there around, who are people who use DeFi platforms? Like, where are they based? Is there something in it for us being able to reach beyond an English language audience? Do you have any sort of thoughts there on how can we get the world, the next 1 billion people, on board using crypto for their daily lives?
Totally. I think localization is probably the completely overlooked factor for this. And we encounter localization just when we need to support all the different currencies that people in the world use. You can view Step in something like 20 different currencies as well. So that's kind of the first instance we had with localization. But beyond that, you look at the way that different language communities will actually use DeFi, it's a completely different discovery path. So, one of the insights for us, for example, would be that Turkish users have been like a massive contingent of people who are on Solana, and certainly are Step users as well. But the content that's out there for them in terms of like understanding what's happening with DeFi and NFTs and everything on Solana, it's really patchy. It's not consistent at all. So the working theory we have is that if we're able to at least make the product work well for all these different languages around the world, then hopefully we're going to give these people a little bit more of an avenue into DeFi than they would have had otherwise. I think otherwise they tend to use pretty centralized services. They don't get a very full picture of what's happening. There's work behind it for sure, but it is I think a very high payoff activity that doesn't necessarily involve a huge amount of technical work. I think a whole huge number of projects in DeFi, just generally across any chain, are way too North America focused. There is so much more going on in the world outside of North America, and I think if we can just tap into that, like Turkey again is a great example. You've got hyperinflation happening. Something like 1 in 5 people in the country have accounts in centralized exchanges. George, you and I have both seen in person all of the low TC desks spread throughout markets and stuff like that. It's just a normal everyday part of life. So if we can tap into that stuff, I think it's going to do great work in just opening up Solana, especially to more and more people to be able to use it.
Yeah, that's the thing. So we're going to be going out with our translates across the whole app, starting with Turkish and then some of the other countries. So Turkey's number 2 on Step in terms of users. So number 1, USA. Number 2, Turkey. Number 3 is usually like Japan, Thailand, Nigeria, something around there. And then there's like Vietnam as well is up there. And then there's, just a bunch of like random Euro countries and stuff like that. So look, I think there is a huge opportunity there, and you go and look at some of these other, whether it's the NFT ecosystem or the DeFi ecosystem, like none of them have translates ready. So we want to see what we can do to open some doors there and sort of see where it goes, and hopefully that will sort of spread more knowledge as well about what we're doing, because a lot of our communication obviously is English language sort of channels. So we're looking to sort of grow that and open up to more peeps as we go. But go ahead.
Sorry, George, just add to that actually. Like it's a good point there as well. It's the translations are a part of it, but it's even a little bit more than the translations, isn't it? Because like what is the word for yield farming in Farsi, for example? I don't know. I'm not sure you know either. Is there even a word for it? Who knows? Does the concept even exist in that language? Who knows? So there's this whole piece of like, you can translate language and whatnot, but if the concepts don't even exist, and that's pretty common in DeFi, there's a lot of stuff in DeFi that is first time it's ever been invented or used. That means that we also have to go through the act of educating people about what these things are in those languages as well, to be able to even use the name of it in the first place, which is a fun part.
Yeah, absolutely. And crypto is notorious for just making up new names for stupid things all over the place. So it's like, how are you going to translate all of? It's like, go and take your dingle donks to your Molgongaboos, and you can go stake it. It's like, what did you just say? You didn't say anything. So like, you've got to be able to translate all of these concepts across everywhere. And I guess one thing for you as a designer is you've been, I know decimalization is one of your battles that you love fighting against, like fiat currencies, and like, if someone's 10 to the negative 0 Bitcoin, like display that in VND, there's like 10 decimal places there and stuff like that. So all of these just random things pop up, right? Like if you're dealing with like either different currencies or different languages and stuff like that.
That's very true, for sure.
Cool. Well, so look, we've got a new update coming out soon. Stay tuned. We're just going through QA, and that'll all be great. So there are a couple of the cool things coming this September, I should say. We've got setting things on fire and making money. So that'll be the burn function with tokens and NFTs. We've also got translates. We've got a couple of other cool things as well in the background. So stay tuned. Let's switch track a little bit to NFT land, and particularly SolanaFloor. Now, I guess both of us, I guess number one, we could talk about any updates with SolanaFloor, but number two, I want to talk about indexes. And you love a good index. What's an index? Why should we care? And in our specific case here, we've got the SolanaFloor NFT Blue Chip Index that we might want to talk about. So just in general, like, why should we care about indexes? What's the point?
Yeah, I think an index is a really great way to get a sense of like how the overall performance of a particular type of asset is doing. And NFTs are really, really useful for that, because it is incredibly hard to understand like what is the actual value of all of these things. Different projects have different attributes, there's different levels of hype around all of these different things. Some things are legit, some things aren't legit. So how much NFTs worth as an asset class? That's an incredibly hard question to answer, and it's really relevant when you're trying to show somebody the value of the NFTs that they have in their portfolio and the relationship that has to price where it exists for any of those NFTs. So an index is really useful. What's a price? Yeah, that's a whole other whole other discussion. But yeah, an index is really useful to be able to just take a measure, like have your finger on the pulse of like what is the actual money flow and value floating around all the different NFTs on Solana, just to give you a sense of like how things are actually tracking. So that's what I love about the blue chip index that we have on SolanaFloor.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, it's that one area to give you sort of an overall view of things. And we're talking to a few different integration partners as well for it. Lots of peeps are interested in it. I'm pretty sure SolanaFloor is the only one that does an index currently of the NFT market on chain. So, or at least displaying it on chain, maybe coming soon. We'll see. But also just like I was kind of memeing there a little bit about what's the price, but a price is actually something that we have to deal with quite a bit at Step. And the price isn't just, oh, well, like go and check the exchange. Well, there's 100 exchanges and they all have a different price. So what's the price? And then you go, oh, well, it's an average of all of them. It's, well, okay, some of them have $10 billion volume and then some have $20. So should you really, take an average of the prices that are developed by the ones which have $20 in volume? Oh no, okay, you have to weight it for volume. So actually a question like what is the price becomes exceedingly difficult as time goes on, and you could write a thesis and documents on what you think the price is. I guess maybe one good example of this, Kristin, that we're aware of is the NFT gallery and displaying the value of an NFT that you touched on before.
Absolutely.
Is the value, like in the case of the Star Atlas NFTs, is the value like the ask price, or is it the bid price, or is it the last price that was used, or is it an average over the last 24 hours? Like what is the price according? What do you think?
Yeah, short answer is yes. Yeah, no, Star Atlas ones are a really good example because they, in name they are NFTs. Fortunately, there's a lot of fungible aspects to it because you have so many copies of the original NFT, and they trade on a marketplace. For anyone who doesn't know, they operate via an order book structure. So in showing the price of an NFT, you could say, well, let's just show the mid price, which is the difference between the bid and the ask. If those two figures, if the bid and the ask are really far out, then that mid-market price might be actually incredibly non-representative. You can have markets that only have one or two participants in them. Those figures can be really spread out. That creates a very skewed kind of figure that maybe you couldn't even access if we wanted to sell 10 of one spaceship or something like that. So then, do you use an ask? Okay, well, what about all the markets that don't have any ask at all? That's another problem you've got to deal with then as well. So, then trying to figure out how do you determine the floor for a lot of these different things. Can you use historical data for it as well? There's just so many different things that pop up with this, and whatever approach you take for one project has to be extensible across all of them as well. So anything that we did for Star Atlas, for example, that whole kind of structure had to then go and apply to all the other different types of NFTs out there. You can use floor value as a nice proxy for value, I think, for a lot of different NFTs, but it's by no means high fidelity. Like there's so many other factors for each of these projects, like attributes, rarity, etc., that would influence what the actual value of your individual NFT is, that trying to codify that as a figure is incredibly difficult.
Yeah, well, that's maybe where NFTs stand out, is that the case we gave was Star Atlas, and they have an order book, right? They have bids and asks, and people like that. All of the Star Atlas NFTs are exactly the same. So it's kind of like, it's basically a token at that point. But like, as you say, if you sell 10 of them, like, are you going to get that price? Well, probably not. So then you have to take into account liquidity. One of the cool ones that I really like is the CoinGecko representation of liquidity. They give you the plus or minus 2% depth when you look at the markets tab for tokens there. So I think that's maybe a pretty good representation of what you can expect to sell something at. But I guess just back on NFTs, like it also applies to normal NFTs, because as you say, they're all different, and also they're all traded on different marketplaces. So it's like, well, what's the price? What's the floor price, bro? It's like, well, which one, bro? It's like, which
That was
marketplace?
a pet peeve I had for the longest time, is that when people would use the term floor price, what they were really meaning was the lowest price on a particular marketplace. Generally, they were meaning Magic Eden. But before Magic Eden was as dominant as it is, we had all these other marketplaces as well, and the floor could vary wildly for just about any collection based on how widely you'd like to consider all the different marketplaces it's traded on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I guess that's something that maybe is an insight that maybe people haven't thought of. But yeah, that's something that we sort of think about every day. But I guess one thing as well when we're talking about NFTs and these sorts of things, fees, right? And I guess at the moment there is there's a debate in the DeFi ecosystem as well about 0% fees. Is it good? Is it healthy? Is it bad? What's the deal with it? Oh, NFTs, the royalty should go to the artists, blah, blah, blah. They deserve to get paid, versus some platform comes along and subverts it and they set it to 0%. So then you can buy NFTs for 0% and there's no royalty. So there's a lot of people sort of talking about this kind of stuff. I don't know. What's your take on, in general, like 0% fees? Is it sustainable, or what's the deal?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a thorny issue. I have no firm either pro or anti stance on it, because I'm genuinely not close enough to it to understand it. But I can see good reasons on both sides of it. I think the idea that cutting out royalties starves artists is probably a little bit of a furphy. I think most of the time this is an issue for 10,000 item PFP collections. And let's be honest, I think the artist most of the time is not really getting a cut of what happens on most of those projects anyway. It's kind of done up front, that person's paid, and then whatever happens then kind of goes to the project and the community in some way, shape, or form. So maybe it's not so much about defending artists' ability to get paid, but how does that then touch the one of ones space? Not entirely sure. I mean, not sure what the right answer is to it, really. I can see why Genesis Go had to cut out their free RPC services, though, and it's not that it's any one particular company's fault or anything like that. It's literally just the reality of them not being able to have the revenue there to be able to sustain that as a free service for the rest of the community. But yeah, it's an interesting side effect of that, actually.
Yeah, and Genesis Go has their other stuff going on, right? Like the Shadow Drive thing and stuff like that. I don't know. Have you checked that out? I haven't really. I know of it, and I know when it launched and that sort of thing, and they're doing good stuff, but I haven't really gone in depth with it.
Yeah, I'm only very partly across it. I don't know the Shadow Drive too well. I wish I knew it better. I wish I was able to use it more as an end user.
I guess the TLDR is, like, if you're going to have 0% fees, then you kind of need to look for other avenues to make revenue, right? So doesn't matter what kind of project you are, and where's that going to come from? Where are NFT communities going to, let's say everyone, the 0% thing catches on tomorrow, where's everyone going to go? Like, how are these projects going to become sustainable? I guess, like, NFT projects make money in the initial mint, for sure. So when you mint, you're paying them basically to get that JPEG. But okay, you mint it like 0.1 sol or something, and then it moons to 10 sol. So the project's only got 0.1. They don't see the benefit of the 10 sol sales. So that's kind of where, like, royalties are maybe more of a sustainable method. But we've seen this before. Zero tried to undercut Orca. These kinds of things. You know what it reminds me of is everyone used to go and pirate everything from Pirate Bay and movies and everything, and we'd all go on BitTorrent things, and then Netflix came along and they just had like a better, cleaner product, and everyone was like, I'm happy to pay for it. And maybe that's kind of what Orca's done with the Whirlpools, because the Whirlpools are at 0.3%. Like, that's pretty high fees compared with like 0.0001 or whatever it is on Saber. Yes, they're slightly different things, but still, in general, like, you can go and make a ST Sol to Sol Whirlpool if you wanted. They're like assets. You can make a USDT USDC Whirlpool if you wanted. Still, you're going to pay 0.3%. So why are people willing to go and do that? I don't know. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, sorry, just to go back to some of the stuff on the NFTs there as well. The thing that comes to mind is what DeGods has done. I suspect that that having that two-step approach of like you've got NFTs that get minted, but then you've got this token, this secondary token that plays some part in the relationship between all these things. I think a lot of teams are going to have to move towards that type of a model. Like that seems at least more sustainable than not being able to rely on royalties at all.
Yeah, no, it
but
does.
yeah, it'll be interesting to see
it does
how
make
many
sense,
people.
and Dust has been doing pretty well. I think there's some other NFT projects against their projects. So yeah, stuff like that. Maybe that's another revenue potential. But whatever they do with those fungible tokens, they're probably going to end up on an AMM or something like an Orca Whirlpool at the end of the day. And yeah, that's been pretty interesting to see actually how Dust has performed over the last week or two. Like it's been 600K liquidity, 4 million volume. That's 400% efficiency. Yeah, pretty crazy numbers.
It's something like 300% price increase in just over a month or just under a month. I'm frothing that I missed out on that.
Yeah. I don't care too much about the individual tokens. What I'm interested most is how the whirlpools are changing the game. I made a prediction at the start of the year that 99% of all AMMs will be concentrated liquidity by the end of the year. We're in month number 9 now. I'm pretty sure we're going down that track already. Radium doesn't seem to have a concentrated liquidity thing. Everyone's kind of forgotten about them. You've got the whirlpools, which are very much more capital efficient with everything, using the Uni V3 style of things. So yeah, I think we're still going to keep trekking down that path. You got Sakura, you got Lifinity, Crema. Crema blew up, didn't it? I can't remember. But yeah, so I think concentrated liquidity, however these people want to monetize, it's going to be a good token sink for a lot of these different things.
Oh, definitely. I tell you what, the other elephant in the room as well around concentrated liquidity market makers is what happens to Serum? What's your thoughts on that?
Ooh, well, so the argument for Serum being necessary is what Sam SBF has always said is order books are it's not the price makers, or essentially order books set the direction of things because they're infinitely flexible. You can deploy any strategy that you want on an order book and off you go. You can go and do it. So I think Serum will always be there. It's going to be this backbone sort of in the background of things. But to be honest, how many people are interacting with Serum that much? I don't know. It's more sort of, there's a lot of people which are building, let's say it's like a vault, and you put your tokens in there, let's say 2 tokens, USDC and Sol or something. You put them in that vault, and then that will go and deploy it to the Serum order books for you, and then it'll run some strategy, and that'll go and earn some money for you. That seems to be how a lot of people are doing it. Pretty sure Atrix, Armand used to do that. There's a bunch of other people I'm forgetting, new ones who are also doing that. It seems to be that's how people are interacting with Serum. It's not so much let's go to the front end. I know there's some good front ends out there, don't get me wrong. But yeah, I think the order book game seems to be still in the hands of centralized exchanges. Now, maybe that's just because by virtue of them being centralized, it's easier, quicker, blah, 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 closer to the customer. I don't know. What do you think? Is the problem DeFi? Is that why people are not using order books? Or are the way that we're using order books fine? Should we all just go switch to concentrated liquidity tomorrow? Where are things going?
Yeah, the future I see for things like Serum, I agree. I think there is absolutely a case for some sort of order book to exist on chain. I don't see most people using it directly though. Like you say, I think there's going to be all these different products that sit around it. I see a future, and maybe I'm wrong, but I see a future where there'll be 4 or 5 large market making firms who are out there, running pretty sophisticated strategies on Serum's order book, and the rest of us are just providing liquidity to CLMMs or a bunch of other different products, and all of us get the benefit of this immense amount of depth of liquidity that we can avail ourselves of. But I just struggle to think of different cases where users are going to want to sit there and have a particular order at a certain price just on Serum's order book. I'm not sure I see the end user case for it. I can see the case for order books generally, absolutely. I just don't think there's going to be a lot of user facing tools for Serum in future.
Well, you remember in a past life how I used to run a order book bot on a Raspberry Pi in the office.
Body. Remember Body?
Yeah, I remember Body. Man, that was a pain, wasn't it? Like just those strategies. Like yes, they're flexible, but oh, it screws up, or oh, the bot went down tomorrow, or something like that. So I think having automated strategies that are coded into the smart contract is certainly a better way to go about things. But having said that, when you observe the Serum trades that happen, like it's clearly mostly bots. They're all like identical trades of like zero point 0.1 of whatever token back and forth. There's a lot of that going on. But the cool thing is that every time someone does a trade on something like the Solana blockchain, you have to pay a fee. So it's ultimately it's real volume, which for a centralized exchange, you couldn't really say that, right? Like you go to Binance. Wasn't there that thing with Binance? Like must have been like 2 years ago or something. People thought CZ was running 8 different servers to like spoof volume and stuff like that. Hey, I don't know if that's true or not, but the thing is, like, it's easier to be able to spoof volume on a centralized exchange than it is on a DEX, because you got to literally pay fees.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, another funny thing over the years as well, I think in almost every instance, the truth turns out to be way more boring than the conspiracy theories people tend to imagine. It's a very minor number of cases where the truth is actually way more exciting than fiction.
Yeah, look, I always say, like, never ascribe malice to something which can be described by incompetence. And people often like, oh, there's like a secret cabal strategy of the VCs and they're dumping tokens and they're doing all this. It's like, dude, actually, people are just dumb. And it's like something dumb has happened and that's it. Like that's all that's going on there. Yep. So yeah, I would totally agree. Cool. So we've spoken a little bit about what Sept's got going on. We touched a little bit on the blue chip index with SolanaFloor as well. Is there anything else? Sort of, I guess we do have some things coming up for SolanaFloor, but probably nothing too much that we can talk about. But maybe we can also talk about the what's happening in crypto in general. Any thoughts there? Like what's going on with this merge stuff?
Oh goodness, yeah. I'll try not to mention Vitalik's penis. Oops, I already did. But I think the merge is an interesting one. I suspect will it happen or won't it happen? I don't know, but I suspect the probability or the possibility at least of it not happening isn't being adequately priced in as well. I think there were some interesting results they had today from something that was happening, some missed blocks or something like that. I think if it happens, cool, that'll be great. I hold Ethereum. I like Ethereum. The chain is fine. I just don't know that it's suitable for what most people will need to do in future most of the time. But I think the expectations around the merge are so overhyped that it's almost certainly got nowhere to go but down after this. Like people are treating the merge like it's a second coming of Jesus, and it's cool if it works, but the actual benefits to end users that you'll see straight away, I don't think they're going to be there in the way that most people are expecting them to be. And that's probably going to be a pretty disappointing moment for people. So when even the best case scenario has that kind of a dynamic baked into it, I worry about what will happen to the ETH price short to mid-term. I think long-term it'll be fine. Like most chains will have their own communities and will have their own adoption and whatnot. But yeah, I'm a bit cautious about the merge. And I think it's probably the only real tradable event we have coming up. So the expectations around it are so loaded. Everyone is looking at everyone, looking at the merge. And as soon as anything doesn't go the way everyone thought it would, we're probably going to see some pretty major action, volatility, and then we'll get, the tide will really go out after that point. I think there'll be nowhere left to hide for crypto generally. So it'll be a bit of a bleak moment, I suspect. What do you think, George?
Yeah, well, there was a thing I just saw like a couple of hours ago. People were saying, Alameda's wallets deposited 20 mil USDC and they borrowed 16 mil ETH. And like, what are they going to do with that? Also, we recently today posted a thing on Sept of a particular wallet on the Solana blockchain, which has a pretty big number backing it. And we think the owner of that wallet rhymes with Balabita. And
smooth.
And it's I don't know what they're thinking. Like, if you're borrowing ETH, that means that you're short that versus the collateral. So I don't know. Maybe they want to do that sort of play. As you say, like, is it something which is tradable? Is there anything else in the future? You know what though? Like, for everyone, I see a lot of Solana peeps in chat here. Like, Solana's been doing really well recently. So if everything was based on news and the world was sane, like, we would be pumping to the moon. But we're not. Why? And it's because generally the broader market is not. So, like, Solana, I think they did a testnet run recently where they got like 6,000 transactions per second for some brief period or something like that. And certainly mainnet has been holding up pretty well recently. So, like, all systems go. Everything's going really well. It's super smooth to be using things and interacting with stuff. I haven't had any problems for months. It's been really great. So, yeah, all good news really on that front. So
yeah, I think people are still absolutely sleeping on it, aren't they? Like, we've got the Utes Mint coming up. I guess that'll be the next sort of stress test, but I don't expect to see too much drama with that.
Yeah. Well, these NFT mints come and go with sort of stressing the network for some short periods of time. I guess in general, like I was saying the other day to people, like there's different schools of thought of what a blockchain should do, and where Solana falls. So you got the Solana camp is everything should be on the L1, and the L1 should be super fast, and it should be low cost, and that's how we scale. Is we just scale that bad boy. We lock in as many speed improvements as we can, and that's what we ride. And then you've got order books, you've got AMMs, you've got lenders, you've got all these things that are all on the L1. Then you've got the Ethereum land, which says that our chain is slow and sucks with however many it is, 10 TPS or 7 or whatever. And the way to scale is L2s. Now, okay, I get it. Like, if you need to scale to order book dexes and stuff like that, like say DYDX, which I'm probably going to get cancelled by even mentioning them because they just like literally block the entire world at the moment.
Sanctioned.
Sanctioned. I just got sanctioned. But DYDX is a good example of an L2, built on top of Ethereum on one of the various different L2 platforms which they have. I think it was Starkware, wasn't it? But you've got Arbitrum, you've got Optimism. So that is the way that that they're building things out and scaling. Is that a long-term thing? There was a post by Vitalik a couple of years ago where he said roll-ups need to come now and sharding will come later. But sharding could be years away for Ethereum. So anyway, the Ethereum camp is like put liquidity elsewhere in these different silos. But if you're in a Starkware L2 or a ZK roll-up, you can no longer address in a single transaction the liquidity in Aave on the L1. You have to cross the bridge, and now there's a billion bridges. And by the way, every bridge has been hacked this year. I think the Solana method definitely has its drawbacks as well. Solana's been down multiple times, that's not been good. So, is the jury still out on which way is better to scale? I guess also there's like the Cosmos method, Cosmos itself, like Cosmos is not an individual chain. It's a network of chains. And all the chains can like talk to each other essentially and do stuff. And there's like a giant internal bridge called the Cosmos Hub. So Cosmos says, hey, you go build your own chain, you go do your thing, and then you can go and talk to all the other chains. And then that's how we scale. So we actually scale by everyone running their own chain. So 3 different methods, 3 different ways to scale, problems with all of them. I mean, Terra was on Cosmos, but that wasn't a Cosmos thing. That was an individual Terra thing. So yeah, look, I don't know which method is best for scaling. All I can say is performance on Solana seems to be pretty good with the recent updates. Pretty happy about that. Yeah, and then one time I tried to withdraw money from an L2 bridge and like I literally lost it. And then I redeemed it, and I found there was some convoluted way for me to use Etherscan to like go and interact with the individual contract. You know how you can do that on Etherscan? And I was like, man, I don't want to do that. Like that sucks. So, that's that's I guess scaling in 2022. Will we get better?
Yeah, so I think I think all of these different approaches will probably find their own niche, but I think the whole buzz at the moment of Ethereum and L2s as being like the way that adoption happens is completely fictitious. If you've watched people use computers who aren't in crypto, like I would challenge you to make the case that L2s will be something that people just come to terms with. Like most people have trouble using Microsoft Word, And this is where most usage is going to come from. Adoption isn't going to come from somebody who's just been degenning on curve pools and like knows the fuck out of everything. It's going to come from your mom. It's going to come from your dad. It's going to come from people who don't want to have to use computers, for God's sake, because we've got so much else going on in our life, the baby's crying, etc., etc. Like, there is no room in most people's brains for this convoluted structure of an L1 and an L2, and I have to bridge over here, and I've got to do this, and then I've got to break a chicken's neck and sacrifice a virgin, and sometimes I get my money back, but it's actually this like babushka doll of 5,000 different USD stable coins, and the guy down the road will only take one of them, and I don't have it, and blah blah blah. Like, it's just a fiction. Like, there will be some people for whom that will work fine, but it is not most people. It is not even a majority of people. It is not even a vast majority of people. It is like far, far, far more niche. So I think that whole structure of like focusing on L1 and just trying to deal with the complications that you have for that, because there is like irreducible complexity for interacting with a blockchain. You know, like it's not the case that we can just make blockchains behave like Web2 UX. Private key ownership is like a fundamental part of this, and it's supposed to feel a little bit awkward. It's supposed to feel a little bit intimidating, because you do have control. You know, remember, with this stuff, we're decentralizing power. That means you have responsibility for the money that you hold. You can't really design that away. You can smooth the edges of it, but the fact that there is responsibility baked into that is something that can't be hidden or removed entirely. So these are the types of challenges I think we need to focus on, rather than like creating pretty UIs for bizarre gardens of L2s that don't make any sense to most people.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's probably why in the bull market, a lot of the traction was gained from, say, the centralized exchanges. Like, I've maybe said this before, but in some of my talks with some of the exchange CEOs, like, they said that they had 1 million people a month signing up. And those people are not going on to the L2. They're just there using like Binance.com or FTX or whatever it is. They're just pressing buttons on the UI. What more do you need? Am I going to go learn about an L2 lending protocol and, my MetaMask, I forgot my words, I just lost all my money? No. So I think DeFi it's going to be, and maybe the same with the NFT scene as well, or maybe to a lesser extent. I think that appeals to a different crowd and market, but certainly in the DeFi world, like it is a harder product. And the question is, do you try and build your, like, if you try and build a Binance-like UI in DeFi, you have to sacrifice on the functionality of the DeFi thing of which you're building. Maybe it sacrifices the decentralization. Maybe it sacrifices a bunch of other stuff as well. You have to make so many compromises where it's like, why don't you just go and build a Web2 website anyway and just go and do that?
Yeah.
And, like, what are you doing? So it kind of comes down to a question of, I think DeFi might live in its own kind of little world, and it'll piggyback off the broader crypto market, which remains on centralized exchanges and stuff like that. We would all love for everyone to own their own keys and have their own wallet and all sorts of stuff. But at least at the moment, it's not something that's hugely viable. Maybe that'll change with Apple or Android or people embedding keys, and maybe the Solana phone is going to change everything. Stuff like that, you know. Maybe that's something which is going to move the needle forward. You know, the cool thing is that at least Solana's trying and doing good things, right? They're trying to build a phone, and why? Because they want to onboard 1 billion people. That's why. Yeah. What other exchange ecosystems have literally the goal of, we want to onboard 1 billion people, and instead of telling you about how our validators validate this proof of stake, but nobody cares, bro. Like, go and build a phone, and then like go and build some products for it that people want to use. And yeah, I think, look, that's admirable.
Absolutely agree. Yep.
Cool. Yeah. Well, so okay, we've got some of the other sort of market things. I'm looking here at the list. We've spoken about the merge. You know, Discord. We've got a few things going on there. We recently reorganized our Discord as well, so definitely come and drop by and say hello if you want to. But is there anything else we should touch on, Kristin, do you think, before we wrap up here? We've sort of been going for a while.
I think that's probably it. Yeah, I mean, don't be afraid to come into Discord, ask us questions, and yeah, I think that's pretty much it, man.
Totally. Well, this has been fun. This is a new format that we're going with these community calls. This is also recorded, so don't worry if you missed any. We'll get to it as well. But yeah, come say hello in the Discord or step on Twitter. You know where to find us. And everyone go and follow Kristin, because he's the best designer in the space, and he's a really interesting guy. And he's been in it longer than me, so he's a battle-hardened veteran with many scars. So that's why you should go follow Kristin.
I try to fail a little bit better every day.
There you go. There you go. Cool. Well, thanks for joining us. And yeah, that's a wrap. So have a great rest of the day wherever you are in the world. See you later.
Thanks, everyone. Enjoy your day.
Cheers, guys. See ya.